Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
Well, my friends, that was not supposed to happen. All right, that was whoops, let me get the mic right. That was give me a sec real quick. That was not supposed to happen, but that's why he hasn't been in a lot of videos. The stand underneath him kind of broke or something. So I got to fix that. But today, man, we're talking press conference, but if you haven't heard the news that the Panthers released Jewell, I did a video on that, but now that I've kind of thought about it for a few hours, I want to talk about it real quick before we jump into the press conference. So my initial thoughts, man, when I saw it, I'm like, okay, the Panthers, they might be kind of screwed, all right? I'm not going to lie to you. They might be kind of screwed. But after thinking about it, I'm like, okay, did Jewell make that much of an impact, right? You know, he was at the last two games with a concussion. I watched him play, and, you know, this is true as well. What I'm about to say is, he played in Vero's scheme in Denver, right? So it made sense for him to come here. Just like Nick Scott, and I think Fuller played with them, the Rams before Denver, if I'm not mistaken. But when they come to Carolina, it's like if Vero is almost running a different scheme than he ran before. And I don't know why that's potentially happening. You know, if you really think about it, right? All these players that Vero keeps getting, yes, they're not great. We can we can all agree to that, right? But he's getting guys who are familiar with the system, but then none of them are working out. Like, think about it real quick. We can blame Nick Scott, we can blame Jewell, we can blame whoever we want to blame, right? But who's actually worked out? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, right? And I feel like that's what the Panthers have done on defense is, Vero, go bring Nick Scott. Vero, go bring Joe. I kind of just went over it, right? And I feel like looking back at it, maybe Jewell stepping away, potentially going to a new team isn't the worst thing. And hopefully the Panthers realize this moving forward, right? For whatever reason, Double E's guys from previous teams don't work in his scheme anymore. I don't know why. And maybe it's this right here, right? As I continue to ramble. I'm going to get to the press conference in a second. Maybe it's this right here. You look at Fuller. You look at Jewell. Nick Scott, I think, too. And a couple other guys, too. Right? And so let's start with Nick Scott. Free safety, if I'm not mistaken, right? It helps when you have good outside corners. Jewell, Broncos defense. That front seven, their front seven for the last 3 to 5 years has been fire, even without him. But even when he was there, obviously that's why the Panthers went and got him. That defense was fire. So then you look at Jewell, like, okay, how much was him on the inside, right? How much was the guys around him? And it's not to put those players down, right? It's okay. He was allowed to do this because everybody else was doing their role. And now it feels like those guys who were in his scheme previously are just as confused as new guys coming to the Carolina Panthers, right? And I think that's why that scheme's not working. He's expecting player A to do what he did before, but not realizing player A had player X, player B, and player C doing their job, which allowed player A to do what they did really well, right? So let me know your thoughts on that. That's kind of my thoughts on the whole Jewell situation. We got to do some film in the linebackers, kind of see what we have, what we might need. We have a young-ish core, but not a complete. It's complicated, man. But with all that being said, first day of training camp, we got Robert Hunt talking, and we have Dave Canales talking. Scorton talked a little bit. I didn't want to throw any more at you guys, especially with this whole monologue right here. So we're going to look at Robert Hunt, because this one gets interesting, and then Dan Morgan right here, man. So let's jump into that thing.
What would surprising people look like? Competing and winning games, man. Well, I think we all know what that means. You know what I mean? Because surprising people meaning, I think, personally, man, I like what I see. You know what I mean? And obviously we got to play some football here these next couple of weeks, and we'll see how that feels and look. And then we'll play other teams. We'll see how that feels and look. But I think we built the right way, man. I think we're physical. I think we're big. I think we're nasty. We got new skills. We got skills on defense. I think, new D-line. I don't know. For me personally, I'm not setting an expectation or anything like that. I'm just saying, for me personally, I think I like what you learned.
So before we get to this crazy question in a second, I like what he says. I think right here.
Skills on defense. I think, new D-line.
New D-line. Now, here's the thing with Robert Hunt. Robert Hunt, he's a great speaker. I could see him easily doing some type of speaking role with the Panthers, podcast with them, once his career is done, depending on how long he stays here, right? But I love how he talks. And what I heard right there was this, all right?
Skills. We got skills on defense. I think, new D-line.
New D-line, right? And he said that. He's like, "Oh, let me let me not tread too far into that," right? Because he seems like a guy, he's not, he's a very nice guy, right? He's not trying to start any beefs with anybody. He's like, new D-line, let me not dive into that too much. But he's honest and he's real, and he has to say that because the D-line last year, as you guys know, was so bad. So him saying that right there, it's like one of those things, like almost like an intrusive thought, right? Like, all right, I said it. Let me keep this thing going. But I like that he's honest, right? And you look at the D-line we have now. Even though Bobby Brown, he's on that injury list, but he's not on that PUP list, so he can come back at any point. But Bobby Brown, Tarshawn Wharton, Derrick Brown. We got our big boy in the middle as well. I mean, the defensive line looks way better this year than it did last year. And as I mentioned in my video, I talked about A'Shawn Robinson. And A'Shawn Robinson was what? Right in what? Top half or bottom half, depending on how you look at it, right? So 0 to 50, he's kind of right above that for defensive line guys based on PFF. He did that with not a lot of help around him. Imagine the potential he has coming second string, fresh, second, third down. I'm telling you, A'Shawn Robinson, he might shock some people this year, but let's keep it going because this question right here is it's gonna blow your mind, man. Take a listen.
I don't know. For me personally, I'm not setting an expectation or anything like that. I'm just saying, for me personally, I think I like what
did you learn about him from the decision to bench Bryce last year?
I don't know about that. That's above my pay grade. That's just crazy.
Dan, we got.
Why are we asking that question, right? And we all know who that was, right? But why are we asking Robert Hunt what he thought about Dave Canales benching Bryce Young week 2? I mean, this doesn't help our case that sometimes the Panthers, they're a circus show. Because you got reporters right here asking an offensive lineman. It's not like he's been with the Panthers for 10 years, right? And it's like a Pete Carroll type of situation, right? Where they're close. In that case, maybe it might make sense. But to ask Robert Hunt, who's been here now 2 years, so not even really 2 years yet, about a coach that's now been here not even 2 years yet, about benching a quarterback? I mean, come on, man. But now let's listen to Dan Morgan right here.
About Derrick Brown, do you have an update on his timeline for?
He's doing good. He was cleared for all activities. He's looking great. He's feeling great. We're excited to have him back. I mean, he's a huge piece of our defense.
Regarding the defense and Evero returning, what are your expectations for stopping the run this season? And do you have the right personnel to fit the 3-4 alignment?
Yeah, it's hard to win football games when you can't stop the run, and obviously
And now Josey, again, the whole Josey thing, I go back and forth on, right? Because even with Josey and Shaq Thompson in week 2, the Chargers did a number. The Saints did a number. So, man.
This past offseason, it was an emphasis to build our front, make our front as strong as we can.
I don't know that we did that. I know we built it, but I don't know that we made it as strong as we can. And I don't want to contradict myself too much because it is a pass-heavy league, right? So I don't want to completely go in on that 3-4 inside linebacking core, right? If we're going to go nickel and dime. But I felt like we could have potentially made that a little bit stronger.
Obviously, it's always going to be a work in progress. We're always going to look to add, but we're going to be smart in selecting people from the outside. So feel good about it, but long story short, the guys got to put the work in. They all got to come together as a unit, create that continuity. And I think if they create that continuity, we could have a good front.
Let's talk about that real quick, all right? Because he talked about, he wants to be smart, bringing people from the outside in. And I get it, right? Because then you go back to Jadeveon Clowney, right? Why was he gone after 1 year? I think we kind of know why, right? Deontay Johnson, why was he gone? So they talk about being smart, but yet sometimes they do things like that, and I kind of go back and forth with it on. I know what his general message is, but it goes back to kind of what I said about people being in a real scheme than coming over here, right? I think for Trevin to really excel, you can't have him trying to do 50 things at once, right? It's the same reason Dan Morgan has Brent Tillis working for him, because Dan can't do everything by himself. He needs help. And so that's the only thing I worry about with this front seven, the inside linebacking core, is who's going to do whose job, right? Man.
Been very patient with this roster at last year and this year in between, mini camp and training camp. I know you just had a bunch of guys come in for workouts. Do you see any alterations that you can make kind of over the next week or so?
I think it's going to be continuous throughout the season. Like, I think we're always going to look for ways to improve the roster. But sometimes, the answer is right on your own roster.
Okay. All right, let's talk about this one real quick. So, just so you guys know, Mr. Julian Blackmon, all right, the free safety for the Colts, who I liked a lot. There was a little concern with his injury. He is now signing with the Saints. So here's the thing with that. Tyrann Mathieu retires, bang, they get Blackmon. Right, and I'm sure the Saints had other safeties on their roster they could have potentially started. But they go out and they get somebody who has potential. And I go back to the Panthers. The last couple years, I've liked everything that Dave and, Dan have done so far, and Brand and Tepper and whatnot, right? But when it comes to the secondary, at some point, we got to get somebody. Mike Jackson, you got him from Seattle, right? You gave up Michael Barrett, your 7th round pick. The dividends, as far as profit, has paid off on that, right? Shaw Smith-Wade, you took him in the 5th round. I think Leighton Ransom, you took him in, the 4th or 5th round. You got Trayvon Mulrig, which is good, but where's the depth at, right? And here's the thing. If we're not going to build a 3-4, right? If we're not going to stack the inside linebackers, that means we're kind of playing that dime nickel package. Then we have to have depth there, right? We've got to have depth at our 3-4 or our nickel dime package. And right now the Panthers, this is the biggest thing. They don't have depth at either one, right? If J.C. Horn goes, I can't even finish the sentence, right? Because you know what's going to happen. So if you don't have depth at either position, it doesn't look good, man. It's going to be an interesting year. Offensively, I'm excited. Defensively, if we don't get pressure, or if we're not scoring, it could be a long season. So let me know your thoughts. That's going to wrap it up. Panthers devices out. Stay tuned. More training content coming soon. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take it easy. Peace.